Before we start today's show, we want to invite you to stick around at the end of the episode to enjoy a preview of a new podcast that premieres on July 14th. As the industry's exclusive cannabis podcast network, MJ Bulls is proud to present Women Leading in Cannabis. Join host Kira Reed each week for inspirational discussions with women who are leading the cannabis industry. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Hemp Barons. I'm Dan Humiston, and today Joy's guest is a first mover and really at the forefront of hemp seed and hemp oil and hemp flour, which, as I didn't realize, is completely different than hemp flour and hemp extract oil. Before I make this any more confusing, let's join Joy's conversation with Matt Birkholz from Colorado Hemp Works.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for being with us on Hemp Barons today.
Of course. Thank you, Joy. Thanks for having me.
And I want the listeners to know that unlike most of the interviews we do here, I actually have a stake in Colorado Hemp Works. And there's a reason for that. I've got opportunities all over after being in hemp for 30 years to have sort of stakes in various emerging and promising companies. But I choose very wisely. And I certainly chose Colorado Hemp Works for a great reason, Matt. And it's such a pleasure to be interviewing you today. Colorado Hemp Works is the first post-prohibition hemp grain processing facility in the United States, based in Longmont, Colorado. What made you decide to get into hemp grain, or the oil seed, as we like to say, aspects of this versatile and valuable plant, as opposed to extracts or fiber?
Well, I've been a huge fan of cannabis and hemp, and I think, I had a small advantage just understanding, early on, late 90s, when I was in school writing papers about sustainability and touching on hemp and understanding that it's something different than marijuana and that it has its own potential and future. And then living in Colorado, which was the first state to allow production of hemp, and beyond that, living in Boulder, Colorado, which is a mecca for natural food and healthy lifestyle, it just seemed like a natural fit when I wanted to find some opportunity in hemp when it became legal here. And I had this advantage of just being in the right place at the right time, and being in Colorado, allowing the production, but also being in an area that is very focused on diet and specific diets and people that are very aware of what they're putting into their body. And understanding that hemp grain is incredibly nutritious and it has no known allergens. So it can fit into literally anybody's diet and provide a really clean source of plant-based protein, as well as omegas and fiber and others. So that kind of intersection is what I saw, and I didn't see anybody else doing it. I'm definitely a fan of CBD and all of the benefits, but especially in 2014, when I was doing this research and looking for my opportunity, I personally didn't want to get involved in CBD just because of the risk. And I know the landscape has changed significantly since 2014, but when I was assessing different opportunities or different directions to go, I was scared off by the regulation and the fact that a lot of the risk around CBD was out of my hands and it was up to regulations and government. It's turned out to be a great thing for the people that have gotten into CBD. And I'm very happy for all of those folks. But for me at that point, at that current landscape, the food seemed less risky and less saturated, I guess. That's why I chose to get involved on the food side, even though I appreciate the whole plant.
No, of course. And also such a different regulatory landscape and such a tremendous contribution to human and animal health. And we'll talk about, AFCO and the FDA not having approved hemp seed yet for any animal species, and such a contribution really to the planet when we look at, of course, the environmental cost of the meat industry. And let's for a second, it's such a great foundation to work with. You touched upon the unique, dense nutritional value of the hemp seed. I often describe it, and I know you've heard me say this before, Matt, as the superfood that needs an actual super cape, a hemp cape. We're talking about the most digestible form of protein, the highest digestible form of protein in the entire plant animal kingdom. So more digestible protein than beef, chicken, whey, soy. And this is, of course, because there aren't any trypsin inhibitors in hemp. Trypsin inhibitors are properties that prevent our bodies from absorbing protein, and they're just not present in hemp, as well as, of course, a full amino acid profile, maybe just a little less than we need for lysine, but we can get that easily in other plants. And then, as you touched upon the omegas, it's the perfect ratio, of course, of these polyunsaturated essential fatty acids. The word essential is there in EFAs, essential fatty acids, because our bodies don't produce these omegas, these EFAs. We have to get them from our food supply. And there's the perfect ratio of omegas 3s and 6s in hemp, including, of course, those which are these long chain polyunsaturated fatty acids, GLA, which is gamma-linoleic acid, and SDA, seridonic acid. And finally, and we could go on and on, you and I could do a show on just the nutritional value of the hemp seed between minerals and folic acid and all of that, and soluble dietary fiber. But it also, I recently discovered, along with only one other seed or nut on the planet, and that's the raw pumpkin seed. So the hemp seed and the raw pumpkin seed are the only two seeds and nuts on the planet that actually leave an alkaline ash in the bloodstream, promoting a pH balance in the body, which is just absolutely phenomenal to me. And when we talk about those regulatory barriers, up until in the last 5 years, I've been teaching credit-bearing continuing legal education seminars across the country on various law and policy of hemp, but one of those has been called the curious legal status of CBD and hemp-derived cannabinoids. And that's why, of course, it's been very curious. It's not so curious anymore. I've had to retitle those seminars, but we're in a different area now. And that brings me to, before we talk about the many offerings and what Colorado Hemp Works does and who our customers are, there, of course, has been yet another huge seismic shift in cannabis policy with the passage of the 2018 Farm Bill. And could you talk to the listeners a little bit about how that has transformed the hemp grain industry, this bill that was enacted on January 1st of this year federally?
Absolutely. So a lot of positive things came out of that Farm Bill, but I think the biggest advantage for the hemp grain and hemp food, the U.S.-based hemp food industry, is allowing different states to work with each other. Me being in Colorado, and, before that Farm Bill, there was no legal way to transport grain from other states into our state. And in Colorado specifically, there was a huge surge in recreational and medical marijuana grows, as well as CBD grows. So there has been this gold rush in a state that at one point was the only state, and then one of just a handful of states that could produce CBD, which really drove up the price of land and the price of farming, the price of warehouse space. So we were sitting here with a fully functioning food manufacturing plant, and there was a very scarce supply of grain. And now that we can transport, we can federally legal to interstate commerce for us to transport grain from other states where it makes more sense to produce hemp grain at a large scale, such as Montana or Minnesota, North Dakota, Iowa, Kansas, or, they're coming online. That Farm Bill opened the door for us to connect with these farmers, these big grain farmers in other states. And at the same time that we were sitting here with a functional processing facility and limited supply of grain, there were farmers in these other grain states under their own pilot programs who had produced large amounts of grain and had no buyers, and they were in a similar situation. They weren't able to export it to other states. So that Farm Bill allowed us to connect and, like puzzle pieces. So, the interstate commerce and the allowance of cooperation between states is really the biggest benefit that we've seen so far from that Farm Bill.
Which is just fantastic. And as you may know, on May 28th, the Office of the General Counsel of the USDA forth an extensive legal opinion from the USDA's perspective as to the impact of the Farm Bill. It was fascinating. It was all in our favor. And it not only says that under the 2018 Farm Bill, states and tribes may not prohibit the interstate transport of hemp. He actually also analyzed this ability and this prohibition under the 2014 Farm Bill and declared in that legal opinion that it is also underneath the 2014 Farm Bill that neither states nor tribes may prohibit the interstate transport of hemp. And as you know, during this growing season, and in fact, until the USDA files its cultivation regulations with the Federal Register, which we don't expect the final version of that to happen until the end of this year, after the public comment period begins in April, everything is still running under the 2014 Farm Bill. And the basis for the General Counsel's legal opinion there is some language that exists in the 2018 Farm Bill in a certain section that says as long as the hemp is grown in accordance with a certain section of the Agricultural Marketing Act and other federal laws. And so the USDA says right there, explains it very clearly, we are interpreting other federal laws to be the 2014 Farm Bill, and we therefore state that neither tribes nor states may prohibit the interstate transport of hemp, even under the 2014 Farm Bill, which I do just find fascinating. And let's talk for a second, some basic education. You know, after you've been in hemp for so many years, and of course, most of us got into hemp for oil seed and fiber all those years ago. And this idea of hemp extract or CBD extracted from hemp sort of came at us like a side-blinding ton of bricks about 5 years ago. So I want folks to understand that even though folks may use the term CBD oil or hemp oil, when they're talking about CBD extracts, the reality is that we're trying to educate, and it's a shared responsibility, all of us here, that we called hemp an oil seed and fiber crop, meaning we press oil from the seed of the plant, which we also refer to as grain, right? So it can get confusing for folks. We're calling it an oil seed crop. We're calling it a grain crop. That's different than CBD oil, which is extracted from the flowering tops and the leaves of the plant. So extracts come from the flowering tops and the leaves, and CBD is an extract, and that's where hemp extract comes from, versus hemp oil or hemp seed oil, but we've created the term hemp oil decades ago, and that is oil pressed from the seed, not a source of cannabinoids at all, and very rich, of course, in omegas 3s and 6s. Will you tell us what products Colorado Hemp Works processes and distributes?
Sure, of course. Yeah, no, and I think that's a good point. There is a lot of natural confusion around two areas, and you just very eloquently pointed out the two different oils, the extract oil from the flower and green material, and then the expelled or cold pressed oil coming strictly from the seed. So that is one of our products. Hemp seed oil is the product that we produce. And we sell that to some different natural food companies that'll use that as an ingredient in a product that they make. But the biggest segment of our hemp seed oil goes to CBD companies to make it even a little more confusing. But CBD companies use hemp seed oil as a carrier fat for CBD in a lot of their products, you know, especially tinctures, but some of the edible products as well. So hemp seed oil is one of our products. Hemp hearts is another one of our products, and that's the hemp nut or a deshelled hemp seed. So we're removing the shell and then isolating the nut, packaging that, and wholesale supplying different natural food companies that, again, use that in their food products. And those hemp hearts have the oil. That's where the oil is contained. And also that's where the protein is. So it's a high protein, high omega, really, really clean, healthy fat and really clean, healthy protein in the hemp hearts. And then the third product that we sell, we create some protein powders, a co-product that comes out of the oil press. And once we expel the oil, everything else that's left is referred to as a seed cake or a seed meal. And that's not unique to hemp. That's similar to soy meal or canola meal or any other seed that's pressed for oil. And it's a dry product, and it's very high in protein because you've taken a seed that's about 30% or more protein and 30% oil, and then you remove the oil and you further distill that protein down in the resultant cake. So that's naturally around 40% protein. And we mill that seed cake down into fine powders and sell that as a protein powder that, again, natural food companies purchase and work into as an ingredient into their products. So you had touched on kind of the confusion around hemp seed oil, and then hemp extract oil, or sometimes just called hemp oil, which is the cannabinoid extract. Another area of confusion that I think we need to work out is the word flower. A lot of the powders that are produced from that seed cake have been referred to for decades now as hemp flour and FLOUR. And I think that's confusing, number one, because it doesn't make for a good baking substitute. It doesn't rise like a traditional flour. You can't substitute, wheat flour or rice flour or some other flour that's specifically used for cooking. But it's also confusing with hemp flour, FLOWER, what's being used for plant extract. So you've got two flours and you've got two oils coming from hemp right now. And I think that's a little confusing. And we need to do a little bit of work to help clear that up.
And every challenge being an opportunity, and cannabis in all of its forms being here to teach us things, how to work with each other, how to synthesize with each other, how to be good farmers, how to be good neighbors, how to get along, how to treat our bodies better, how to treat our animals better. And I think this very confusion, this nomenclature, another great benefit, an opportunity that is presented to us is we're going to have to learn about agriculture. We're going to have to get back to our roots. And that is just another huge, revolutionary, epic, critical lesson that humanity, particularly Americans in this Western civilization, need to be retaught is we do not get our food from a boxed foil package in the freezer section of the grocery store. We get it from farmers, and we need to figure out flour, FLOUR, versus flour, FLOWER. And we need to figure out what an extract oil is versus an oil pressed from the seed. And hemp is here to teach all of that to us. And it's just so fascinating and really fantastic. Now, who are our customers? I know. And by the way, also, just thank you for explaining that the protein powder is, in fact, a co-product from the hemp seed oil industry. In fact, I used to think about 20 years ago that to get a hemp protein, you'd take that seed and you would grind it up, and then you'd get your protein powder. But in fact, you'd get a nut butter if you did that. The protein powder
heavy
is the
oil.
Co-product from the seed cake, right? It is milled after the oil is pressed out of it. The seed cake is what's left over, and that is milled into the protein powders, which I just think is so great. So our customers, who are our customers for the hulled seeds and the protein powders, generally speaking?
Those are almost exclusively all natural food companies that produce some type of product and use hemp as one of the ingredients. I think one of the most visible customers that we have are two of them. Really, I was going to mention Nativa, but also Evo Hemp, who's here in Colorado. Nativa sells hemp hearts by the bag, not necessarily used as an ingredient to produce a different product. They actually sell raw hemp hearts in a bag for consumers to take and put into smoothies or put onto salad, oatmeal, added into their own food on their own. But Evo Hemp, I think, is a really interesting company that's been around for a while. They've been at it for quite a while relative to the laws and legality and public acceptance and those types of things. But they make different bars that are high in protein, and they use deshelled hemp seed in a lot of those. They also use powder in a lot of those. And the powder is usually a really efficient way for a company to increase the protein content in any product. So I know that they're using the powder to really achieve higher protein levels. Another company, another example, Good Seed Burger out of Austin, Texas. They have products. They've got a burger patty that they started making with a food truck and really gained popularity and grew. And now they have frozen patties that are available at Whole Foods and some Safeways. So a pretty wide range of different products that are made from it, but usually what they have in common is their interest in high protein, a vegan or plant-based ingredients. And, especially I bring up Good Seed. Good Seed is an excellent example of a product that is hypoallergenic. So they really cater to all kinds of special diets And whether it's grain-free, gluten-free, obviously meat-free, vegan products. So yeah, usually vegetarian, vegan, but not exclusively. And we really cater to different natural food companies that are looking to produce hypoallergenic foods. For the hemp seed oil, our biggest customers are CBD companies, and they are really putting the hemp seed oil market on its head right now because of the demand is unprecedented, and they're really for high volumes.
Wow, that is so great to hear. And the march for a healthier vegetarian, and in this case, vegan source of protein that is gluten-free, that is fast-growing, that is easier on the soil, that will in fact help rebuild the soil. The march really is on. And Canada has, of course, made itself currently the #1 world leader in hemp bulk food ingredients and bulk food process. And I hope that we're catching up. Now, I know that you have some wonderful relationships, Colorado Hemp Works and myself, even some really great relationships with our neighbors to the north who we have a wonderful symbiotic and cooperative relationship with. Can you talk to us a little bit about how we work with Canada and maybe even how the shift is happening from Canadian sources of seed to America as these legal barriers in the United States for cultivation are being removed?
Certainly. Yeah, no, that's a great question. And we have, in 2017, we imported about $140 million worth of hemp food products from Canada. And it's been kind of ridiculous that we have a growing market here for hemp food products, but we haven't been able to produce it. So all of that has been brought in from Canada, but now the struggling U.S. grain farmer is able to produce hemp again. So we'll see how that takes effect. But as far as how we work with Canadian counterparts, it has been cooperative to this point. And I think that's due to the fact that the hemp grain market is so small. The U.S. household penetration for hemp foods is lower than 1%. So there's so much room for growth. And, I think that it's an issue of, where the rising tide lifts all boats. And so it's not about U.S. processors and producers against Canadian processors and producers. And there's this finite pie that we all are just fighting over our little sliver. It's about growing the pie. It's about making the market bigger. And we can do that together by cooperating with genetics, by cooperating with information and techniques, but also committing to each other that we're only going to put out high quality products, because as the other 99% of U.S. households begin to try hemp foods, we want them to have a good experience. So whether it has our label on it, whether it has Manitoba Harvest label or Nativa's label or some other label on it, it doesn't matter. The important thing is that people start to have positive experiences. They have high quality food. They walk away wanting more. They have conversations with their friends and neighbors, and they're positive results. So it's really about growing that market as opposed to fighting over the market that exists today.
So fantastic. And in fact, that's such a great segue to the fact that a little lesson I wanted to make sure folks know is we call that shell around the hemp heart, or the hemp nut, as it's sometimes called, that creamy, white looking, nutty flavored hemp heart. We call that shell the hull. And we use the term hulled, whether we mean it has if the hulls have been removed, we call them hulled seeds, or sometimes people call them de-hulled seeds. But I just wanted folks to know, of course, that the word hull actually means the shell of the hemp seed. And most hemp hearts that are sold don't have those hulls on them. And also that folks understand that generally speaking, and everything is sort of general because it depends on the variety and the size of the seed and all of that, but generally speaking, 3 tablespoons of hulled hemp seeds, meaning the shells are taken off, will give you around 10 grams of digestible protein right there in those 3 tablespoons, which can so easily be added to yogurt, salad, stir fry, French toast, pasta, ice cream, throw it in your smoothies. We try not to, of course, heat it with that beautiful nutritional profile. Once we start to get over 124 degrees Fahrenheit or so, we do start to damage that nutritional profile. But man, if you want to add 10 grams of protein to everything, throw 3 tablespoons of hulled hemp seeds on there. Now, let me ask you this. What kind of a farmer, with obviously the difference in per acre revenue generation, and there's different risks selling, growing and cultivating hemp for extracts versus growing and cultivating hemp for grain and nutrition. But what kind of a farmer are you seeing in the United States choosing to grow for grain as opposed to fiber or hemp extract?
It's a great question. And right now, there's no doubt, and it's no secret, that there's more money to be made producing CBD. And it is a bit of a gold rush, but it's also very new. And the reason that the CBD farmer is making so much right now, and I'm ecstatic for them, is because there's been a spike in demand and a limited amount of states that have been able to produce. And beyond that, it's been difficult to produce. There isn't equipment off the shelf that's going to work with, CBD hemp. So a lot of guys have been out there manually planting clones. I mean, teams of 50 going out in fields and harvesting by hand and, handling it all. It's very high touch. And, so that's changing for sure as additional states are allowing the production. Current producers are getting bigger and all of them are getting better. And there's more automation. So I think that market is going to start to level out a little bit. And people ask often if, we're competing with these same farmers. And why would a farmer want to produce grain when they can produce CBD? And it's a good question, but really, they're very different crops. And they don't use the same equipment. They don't use the same genetics. They don't use the same planting techniques. So when you think about who's going to grow hemp for grain, it's not the CBD farmer. It's corn farmer. It's a wheat farmer. It's somebody that's already producing big grain. They've got big acreage. They've got big grain bins and harvesters and all of the equipment that they've had and built up for generations, and it's geared toward big grain production. Hemp is an excellent rotational crop. So if we're working with some giant wheat farmers in Montana, then they're going to rotate hemp through their plots year over year and give that soil a little bit of relief and even a little bit of rejuvenation. Same thing with corn farmers, even potato farmers. So and soy farmers. So I mean, we're really kind of more aligned with grain farming than we are with CBD production.
No, it makes perfect sense. They're looking to add hemp grain into their grain rotation of their existing farm operations. So fantastic. And I know that Colorado Hemp Works is bursting at the seams with the growth. I know that those oil seed presses are running, am I right when I say 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, essentially, those oil presses at Colorado Hemp Works right now? Hemp seed oil? That's
true. Yeah. They basically get up to temperature and start operating at their optimal efficiency, and they don't want to be turned off. They don't want to be cooled down. They don't want to start back up. They want to just keep going. So we oblige, and we keep them running 24/7.
It is the most exciting thing to see and to witness and to smell that beautiful nutty smell of hemp seed oil. There are no doubt some investment opportunities with all of this exponential growth. If folks were interested in some of these investment opportunities, how might they get in touch with you, Matt?
Well, they could always get a hold of me directly, Matt at ColoradoHempWorks.com, but we have a financial officer that I would most likely hand them off to, and he's best suited. He's handling our current round of funding. But
what a great position to be in.
I would qualify them and then pass them over to Ken.
Excellent, to Ken Miyoshi. Fantastic. And well, just thank you for doing. We are really talking about re-energizing the family farm, and we're talking about a transformation in human diet and in animal diet, and a transformation in, again, the environmental impact of our protein sources. So you're just doing such incredibly important work. It's such an honor to know you, to be involved with what you're doing, Matt. And thank you so much for being on with us at Hemp Mirrors today. I can't wait to have you on again.
Of course. And thank you, Joy. I really appreciate the opportunity to share about what we're doing.
Tell me, boy, you make me so bored. You need to walk the other way. I tell you once more, please.
My name is Kira Reed, and I'd like to invite you to be inspired by the women who are leading in the cannabis industry. Each week, we will discuss empowerment, leadership, and what it means to be a woman in charge in marijuana, hemp, and CBD. As the founder of the Women Empowered in Cannabis community, I have had the great pleasure to get to know many brilliant and talented women who are CEOs, executives, politicians, advocates, and community leaders that are focused on creating a cannabis economy that is just, fair, and equal. We'll learn how these women make decisions, how they navigate a predominantly male industry, and what they're doing to level the playing field for women. I hope you'll join us.